here. Do you guys want to ask any questions? Feel free to write them down, and one of us is going to pick the question up and ask the questions. So while you guys are doing that, I have one question, and I guess it pertains to Donald Trump. With unlimited presidential powers to pardon, what, if anything, can be done about these powers? Trump will pardon his son and son-in-law. Can he pardon himself? As we know, he pardoned the sheriff in Arizona. So, what's your answer?
The pardon of Sheriff Arpaio was outrageous. I mean, truly shocking. The things that person did. And it's completely hypocritical in any case. It's thumbing your nose at the rule of law. It's just so many bad things. As far as pardon power goes, there were reasons for presidential pardon power. It's a kind of checks and balances issue. And to be factually honest about it, often on the last day of their presidency, presidents will pardon many people who really should be pardoned. And Obama, I think, set the record for pardoning people who were given unjust long sentences for drug crimes, for example, people of color, the war on drugs, which was really just an excuse for mass incarceration of Black Americans. Trump cannot pardon himself, but he can pardon just about everybody else. I heard an opinion, which I thought was an interesting one, that Trump's pardoning of Arpaio was a kind of signal to everybody who is in the sights of Mueller, the former FBI director who is leading the Russia probe. So people like Paul Manafort, a Trump campaign advisor who clearly had contact with the Russians, basically saying to them, if you're loyal to me, which is all he seems to care about, I'll pardon you. You don't have nothing to worry about. That's just the worst kind of corruption. But I really don't think that anything can be done about that. I don't think we want to do away with presidential pardon power. Honestly, this is just me speaking. I think a lot of what we established, not just as rules, but even traditions, were based on the idea that a guy like Trump would not become president. It's just, what he does is beyond the pale. That was a kind of an assumption. I mean, Obama built a surveillance apparatus. He doesn't get off. And people say, why are you so hard on Trump? We were hard on Obama too, when he did things that were wrong. He built a surveillance apparatus based on the idea that the president would be a good guy, and it hasn't worked out. So I'm sorry about my answer to that.
Thank you. Did that answer the question? I hope. All right. Could anyone film I think it's called CBP, is that correct? Customs and Border Patrol. Can anyone film CBP?
I think the answer is no. I think you are prohibited from filming them, but I am not 100% sure about it. I just said I wouldn't give an answer I wasn't sure of. I don't know the answer to that. But I think that they can confiscate your, if you started filming them, I think they would be able to simply take away your video camera and stop you from filming in that way, which is something the police can't do. So that's an example of where the CBP has more power than the police. So you may have to rely on your recollection about what happened. You may have, if you're at an airport, you have family, they'll know how long you were there. I mean, they can back up how long you were sitting in that office. But that's the answer. Again, not a very satisfactory answer, but I'm going to tell it straight.
So it's interesting because I just came back in the country a few hours ago, and I was pulled aside. So I can tell you how long I was in the CBP office. About 2.5 hours.
Really?
And just because of my name, because it resembled another person, and he had a warrant against him. Not the situation you want to be in, right? So, yeah, I for one just stayed calm because I knew I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to be afraid of. They took my passport. And inside the CBP office, they take you through 2 different channels. For one, it's if you're traveling with family, they're all going to come and sit in a lounge. It's not a lounge. You can't leave it. Even the members or friends, whoever you're traveling with, they can't leave until you get to leave, right? Because you're all on the same plane. That's my understanding. And then secondly, when they question you, they take you into a separate place. I wasn't questioned, I was just asked to sit somewhere until they checked everything. But nevertheless, it was nerve-wracking, to say the least. So my question, personally, would be, what about the CBP offices that are outside of the country? Because I was not even on American soil. But technically it says after you cross the security checkpoint, it says, welcome to the United States. So even, for me, it seemed like it's just like how the embassies are, right, on a foreign land. Is that the same for CBP?
I believe it is. So you're essentially on American soil, even though you are on a foreign country. One thing I will say about CBP, though, is you have a right to have a lawyer. You should be able to call a lawyer and have a lawyer be with you while they are talking to you. They don't have to provide you with a lawyer. Actually, I just alluded to that. The public defender idea from the Gideon case. They don't have to provide you with counsel. And I would also be wary in general of ICE or CBP or anybody providing a lawyer and saying, you know, I'm here to be a lawyer and listen to what you have to say, or somehow presenting themselves as your advocate. They're not your advocate. Bring your own lawyer. But you should be able to call, I believe, a lawyer, and you have a right to have a lawyer present. But they don't have to pay for it. You'd have to pay for the lawyer or get a volunteer lawyer to come.
And I think to the question that was asked, can you film CBP? There were signs inside of the CBP control room that you cannot have your cell phones out. I literally took my cell phone out just to let a friend know here to get in touch with our Billo if something happens, right? But they said, no, you put that cell phone away or we'll take it from you. So I can't even call or do anything personally.
With regard to getting a lawyer, what I would suggest, I'm really getting into dangerous territory because I'm not supposed to give legal advice, but I would say I understand that I have a right to an attorney. You don't have to provide one for me, but I have a right to call an attorney and have him be with me. So I would like to do that. Is there a place where I can go and make that call? Because I would like to make that call and have that attorney, and then it's on them, right? I mean, they have some kind of rule that says don't pull out a cell phone. Okay, fine. I'm saying I have a right to have an attorney with me. How can we do this? I want to cooperate with you and follow your rules, respect your rule about a cell phone, but I do have a right to have an attorney with me, and I would like to make that call because my way to contact my attorney is via a call or an email or a text. Right? So I would do that.
Good to know for next time. I hope there's a next time. But, so moving on to the next question. How do you work on issues with members of Congress and or local elected representatives?
Well, that's something I'm involved in quite a bit, and I understand you had Bill Quirk out here, and he has been a friend to the ACLU on many issues. I lobby them. I mean, I personally lobby them. I think in general, when you work with people, if you're kind of asking about how to do lobbying, I would say do your homework, come prepared. They're really busy, and what you want to do is bring usually some sort of fact sheet to leave with them. Usually when I'm lobbying people, it is to ask them to either support, vote for or against, usually more likely for, but a particular bill, right? A House resolution or Senate resolution in Congress, or an AB Assembly bill or SB Senate bill in California. So, and often you may not meet with elected representatives, you get a staffer instead. That's okay. The staffers are pretty sharp. They're usually really sharp young people like the two on each side of me, and they're really sharp. And they will advise the elected person in any case, right? So when you win over the staffer, that's fine. That's great. So, what I do is I present, I get to the point about the bill. Why is it a good bill or a bad bill? I end the conversation with an ask. Will you commit to, or will the assembly member commit, or senator commit to supporting or not supporting? The staffer can't really necessarily say 100%, but they can give you a pretty good idea. You're basically trying to pin them down because politicians love to say yes to everybody. They love to tell you they're on your side. They love to tell you that they care about you. But you go in with a goal, and the goal is a yes or no vote on a particular bill. Right? If you want to just go and talk about concerns in general, they should be open to that. I mean, I would lobby, if I were lobbying Bill Quirk, I would lobby on things like SB 21, the surveillance bill, because surveillance is a big. Say, Senator, Assemblymember Quirk, will you definitely vote yes on AB 21, or excuse me, SB 21, when it comes to the full assembly for a vote? So that's generally how lobbying works. It's related to a particular bill. And just in general, just a broad question, winning people over. I'm big on winning people over. I give up a lot later than a lot of people do. People who are opposed to me, and I've had success winning over people. You just got to stay the course. But generally, you're trying to find common ground. You start from common ground, and you work from there. If you can find common ground or agree that something is a problem, the next step is how can we best resolve the problem, and just kind of expand from there.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
If somebody stops, a police officer stops at my house, rings the bell, I open the door. What should I do from that? I don't know why they're there.
I think I heard you say someone came to the house, and then the person opened the door. Right. When the police come to the house. So let me talk about that. Actually, that is part of what I have talked about with ICE and rights. So the police cannot just walk into your house. They have to have a search warrant, right? Actually, there are two types of warrants, but let me explain warrants and how they work. A warrant is something issued by a judge, or sometimes they use the word magistrate. It's a document, and to be able to search your house, they have to be able to prove what's called probable cause, which is, it's a standard that they can't just pick anybody, right? Just on a fishing expedition, there has to be probable cause. So don't open your door. What you can do is say to a police agent, to a police officer, or ICE, who are in hot water for pretending to be police officers, and that's something we're working on. But anyway, what you can say to anyone, a law enforcement person, is, do you have a warrant signed by a judge? That's the key word, signed by a judge. So for example, there's something called a ICE warrant, right? And so again, remember, they can be tricky. So knock on the door, open the door, this is the police. Maybe it's the police, maybe it's ICE. Do you have a warrant signed by a judge? Yeah, I got a warrant. Did they say they had a warrant signed by a judge? No, they didn't say that. They said they got a warrant. It's a code-called ICE warrant. A warrant is a warrant signed by an ICE supervisor. You don't have to open your door for that. It's just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything. It has to be a warrant signed by a judge. You can say, could you slip your warrant under the door? Or could you hold it up to the window so I can see it and take a picture of it with your cell phone? Right? But what you're looking for is a line that underneath in type says Judge so-and-so or Magistrate so-and-so, not supervising ICE guy or ICE head for the county. And if it is a signed warrant by a judge, then you should open the door. There's two types of warrants. One's called a search warrant, which is to open, commonly called a search warrant, which is to search a particular location. Even they will sometimes articulate what areas can be searched, so go around with them, make sure they're not going to other areas. The other type is called an arrest warrant. An arrest warrant is for a person. You don't have to let them into the house. They're saying that they have reason to believe that a person for whom there's a warrant for an arrest, right? They're saying that they have reason to believe the person's in the house. What you could do if you don't want your house to be searched is, if the person is there, you could ask them to step outside the house, out the front door, and talk to the officer outside. Then at least they're not searching your house, because the warrant is for the person, right? So, long answer, but don't open the door unless it is a warrant signed by a judge.
Thank you. Next question is, do you work with youth organizations or youth age groups, students who are most likely to be not aware of their rights with reference to Pakistani youth?
We do, the ACLU does. I don't do much. And in fact, I was asked to speak to a high school not long ago, and I told the person who's kind of putting together our speaker database, I'm better at speaking to adults myself personally. But yes, the ACLU does, absolutely. And it is young people who often are the victims of these practices, who don't know their rights, who are most easily intimidated by bad police officers. It's young men of color who confess to crimes they didn't commit because the police officers play games with them like good cop, bad cop. They confess to the good cop who's like a big brother figure to them or a father figure. They do all kinds of nasty things to young people. It's unbelievable, really. But the answer, I'm sorry, is yes, we do speak to youth groups, and we're well aware of the fact that it is youth that is particularly targeted, often by police.
So I have a similar question. I don't care about myself that much, but I have an 18-year-old son, and so when people ask me where you're originally from, I would just say Pakistan, right? But now, because he's 18, now people are asking him where are you originally from, and he goes blank because he was born here. He is all American. He doesn't even consider himself Pakistani. I mean, of course, origin is there. So you mentioned one point that if some police officer or somebody asks you what is your race and religion, you can just stay quiet.
Absolutely.
So that's what we need to teach our kids.
Absolutely. They have no business asking that at all. I would just say, I wish to remain silent, you know. And, you know, they'll try to get kids to talk. They have lots of ways of doing that. And often it's like trying to act like a friend, right? Trick them. But none of that. That's all out of bounds for police to ask anyone. But the answer really is to say, I want to remain silent. Simply say that. As far as your son being from America, you know, I had a supervisor, Japanese American, that just reminded me. She was born in an internment camp. Her parents were interned. But when this was way back in, you know, when I knew her, it was like the early 80s. But when people would say, oh, you're Japanese, she would say, I'm American. I would look them in the eye and say that. You know, which I thought, yeah, go Phyllis.